Nilou is finally rerunning after almost a year and a half, so it's time to cover some advanced use and gameplay that might help her out. Be aware that, as always, in this series we skip the basics and explore more niche topics. And while you look at this very sad graph, we have to get two things out of the way, because they are the pillars of Nilou's gameplay, and that's how to build your team, and most importantly, how does the Hydro and Danger Aura interact with each other. Nilou veterans will not really think of this as an advanced tip, but it gets constantly asked anytime Nilou is mentioned. And since her last rerun was over a year ago, I expect many to still have doubts. So let's first ask ourselves, how does the bloom reaction really work? Sure, spam Hydro and Danger and you're seeing blooms for days, but if you go in without a plan, your blooms might have inconsistent damage. And that's because, just like Bloom and Burgeon, the damage is decided based on the character that triggers the reaction. You can pause on this chart to see exactly how your level and elemental mastery influences your bloom damage. To add to that, Bloom has a forward and reverse variant, just like Vaporize the Melt. Applying Hydro to a Danger Aura and applying Danger to a Hydro Aura is different. Although it does not include a damage multiplier, the real difference is how much of the other element is consumed. Anything that applies an element in Genshin has a set number of units it applies. For example, a normal attack from Kokomi applies 1 Hydro unit. Her Burst Cast applies Strong Hydro. Now, applying Hydro to Danger consumes less of the Danger Aura. This is a reverse reaction, simply meaning that even if I have 1 unit of Danger on my enemy, any Hydro apply is multiplied by 0.5. It's half of what it should be. So if we start with 1 unit of Danger, I can apply 1 unit of a Hydro twice and get 2 blooms. However, let's do this the other way around. If I have 1 unit of a Hydro and I apply any amount of Danger, even if it's just 1 unit, that's a forward reaction. It consumes double the amount of the element. So the too long didn't read is Hydro on a Danger Aura can fit way more blooms than the other way around. If you want your Danger unit to trigger bloom, for example in Nahida, you have to give her a ton of Hydro. And it might still not be enough. This is a very important thing to understand because it tells us how much of each element we should or can have and who needs an elemental mastery build and who doesn't. Look at this very common Nilou team. Who needs elemental mastery here? Nilou always prefers HP over elemental mastery unless she surpasses 74,444 HP, which is the cap for her bloom buff. Nahida is a great elemental mastery scaler, plus she shares it, so although it's not because she's the main bloom trigger, she absolutely uses elemental mastery very well. Kokomi will trigger the most blooms, the more elemental mastery, the better. This could be Xingqiu or even Barbara, of course. Danger MC, or honestly whatever danger you put in this slot or in the spot of Nahida, is the most misunderstood. This slot should not build elemental mastery. It's very unlikely that it will ever trigger blooms. So you can focus on whatever stats you need. Energy recharge and maybe some damage on Danger MC, healing and HP on Yao Yao, Baju, Kirara, etc. Of course, having some elemental mastery on everyone is not completely out of the question, but it's mostly to cover weird scenarios or misplays more than building ideally. But remember that Bloom does AoE damage to your enemies and to you. This is why a healer is mandatory. There's no way around it. There is no get good nor just dodge. It's that simple. You must carry a healer. Your healer can be a Danger one like Baizhu or Yao Yao. Your healer can also be the one that carries elemental mastery for the team like a Kokomi or Barbara. But when you do have your elemental mastery carrier also heal you, that's where it becomes tricky and there is no shame in going for a hybrid build. You can trade elemental mastery substats for HP ones, or you can even change one of the main stats from elemental mastery to anything that increases healing. Generally, Circlet being healing bonus is the biggest contributor to increasing healing, but since you're going to be on field for some time, HP Sands or Goblet are not totally bad ideas. Although in the case of Kokomi, I would refrain from not using Sacrificial Fragments, as the ability to reposition and refresh your jellyfish without the burst is just way too good. Now let's talk about something you can do with some Nilou team. Many comps, particularly with characters that applied lots of danger really fast, like the Collei plus Nahida combo, will enable certain Hydro units to spam their ICDs to get many blooms in a short amount of time. ICD really quickly stands for internal cooldown and dictates how often a unit is able to trigger a reaction with a given talent. So let's say we have Nahida and Collei's full kit down. We have access to tons of danger being applied on the enemy. Kokomi can exploit this. If we just use normal attacks, we have to wait a few of them to get multiple reactions. So instead, we use anything with an ICD that is available. A normal attack will trigger Bloom. Then a skill cast will also do that. A charger attack will trigger another. The burst cast will as well. And now, going back to another normal plus charge attack continues to do so, while your jellyfish is still also triggering blooms. We simply queued up everything with an ICD available so that every action resulted in a bloom. Of course, it's only usable with a great amount of danger, and it's just an example that you can and should apply given the chance. The main takeaway is that as long as you see danger all around the enemy, it's fine to push more Hydro for more blooms. Every enemy will also take at most 2 damage instances of bloom every 0.5 seconds. As you probably know, a Nilou bloom team can either be 2 Hydro 2 danger, 3 Hydro 1 danger, or 1 Hydro 3 danger. But I will just say right away that the most common one, and the one that makes the most sense, is often the 2+2. Especially with the presence of Nahida. Nahida is not a must, but she completely changes the value Nilou can have on your account. She is the absolute perfect Nilou support, helping in AoE, an ideal scenario for the bloom reaction anyway. Buffing elemental mastery, applying strong danger to multiple targets, and doing all of this without even needing to be on field. I don't want to discourage anyone, but playing Nilou with Nahida and without are 2 very different experiences. Especially noticeable when the enemy moves a lot. And another problem that I think discourages a lot of Nilou players is also finding the right Hydro unit. The thing is, Kokomi feels ideal. AoE Hydro even off-field. The ability to apply Hydro on demand as a catalyst, being a healer and having a widely available weapon that brings even more quality of life. She's almost perfect. Anytime you pick another unit, you're trading something for it. If you go with Barbara, your off-field Hydro application comes from literally hugging the enemy. Using Xingqiu is nice, as like Barbara applies Hydro by being close to the enemy, but if not close, he will only apply Hydro to 1 target at a time, plus his damage reduction does not work for self-damage, although that's far less of a problem. Yelan is more personal damage, but even less Hydro being applied. Ayato will have to trade quite a bit of elemental mastery for energy recharge, and many others just don't have that great of a synergy. On top of all of this, for some reason Hoyo only releases 5-star Hydro units. But again, I don't want to discourage anyone from playing 4-star versions of Nilou teams. Just know that without Nahida and Kokomi, something like this is really not bad, but it's harder to play and is only ideal if you don't have to chase your enemies around too much. Against a group of primordial constructs, the difference between a premium and a free-to-play Nilou team is not that big, but against 10 Rift Towns, you will notice it. Nahida and Kokomi's AoE will carry really hard. A bit more topical here, but let's talk about Furina and Imaginarium Teeter, because both are a bit weird to Nilou. Furina drains HP in a team with tons of self-damage and requires good healing. But even if you're okay with both these downsides, she's buffing damage percentage for your team, which does not buff the bloom reaction itself. Adding to that, if you have Nahida, then your Furina will actually trigger some of the blooms, so now we also need to get her some elemental mastery. Don't get me wrong, you can clear abyss with this, it's just not very synergistic. Another thing I want to talk about is Imaginarium Teeter. If you're struggling with it, and I'm assuming for a lack of characters, then Nilou might not be the best pickup. The reason is that she is obviously not flexible. You have to wait for the Teeter to include both Danger and Hydro, and even if so, there will be a third element which you can never implement into your team without losing her bountiful cores. And even if you wanted to just get some damage out of her, without the reaction she'd use a completely different build. So overall, definitely not the pick for Theater unless you really own a lot of options and can create a multitude of teams. And of course, on a very favorable rotation. I usually have a way bigger focus on mechanical tips in this kind of videos, but with Nilou there's just not that much to talk about. We focused on game plan more than gameplay. But I still have a couple. Nilou pirouettes while doing normals are faster than the skill versions. So technically the fastest way to set up is to press skill, normal attack twice, and then finish with whatever stance you want. Skill for off-field and attack for the infusion. If you have a signature weapon, you need to hit at least 3 times with your setup. So be careful doing a different setup as the normal attacks have less AoE than the skill version. And the on-field stance can also cancel the third normal very early. But do we even ever use that? Well, actually Nilou in some accounts has more uses that are very often underlooked. She can be the Hydra Aura for an Arlecchino team, or a double Hydra team. She can on-field and vaporize or even carry a mono Hydro team. But I decided to not really dive into all of these uses because simply it's either something you do for fun or because Xingqiu or Yelan are needed in another team. Now I hope none of this video goes down the drain because Natlan changes everything, although for Nilou there are both a new Hydro and 2 new Danger characters coming out very soon, so I guess we will see. While you guys look at this sad graph again, I hope you have a wonderful day. I will be in the comment section for any question about Nilou you might have. Leave a like or sub if you enjoyed it, and thank you for watching.